Good evening, everyone, and welcome all to a very special edition of the Undercovers podcast. I am Connor alongside Paul. Ben partied a little too hard and could not make it here this evening, and I honestly can't disagree with him because I feel like we have a very good reason to party after Sunday night's amazing victory against the San Francisco 49ers in the snow to clinch the AFC East again. And this is the earliest any team has clinched their division since the 2009 Indianapolis Colts. To be able to clinch this early, and there's actually another stat that I see people are not talking about. This is the first time ever that a team, let me just rephrase this again, ever has clinched a division this soon while having not even played one of their divisional rivals. You can't forget that we still have to play the Patriots twice this season, and we've already clinched the AFC East before even playing them. No team in history has ever done that. So this iteration of the Bills just continues to break record after record after record. And
Mhm.
hopefully all of this will mean something, unlike how last year when Dolphins fans were, you know, telling everybody about how they put up 70 points, how it wound up meaning absolutely nothing in the long run. Let's make sure that we can close it out to where this means something because being able to clinch the division this soon definitely has a lot of necessary implications, but we'll have plenty of time to discuss the outcome of last week and move on to this week in the review. But let's go ahead into our quick takes. Paul, I'll give you the first one because this one's definitely a topic that's still on everybody's mind. After we saw Aziz Al Shahir absolutely slam Trevor Lawrence while he was down in a slide, how should the NFL handle the quarterback slide in the future?
Well, I think there's definitely need for a change. I mean, eh, you look at that hit. I don't think he's suspended for the hit. He's suspended for two things: the retaliation after the hit and a repeat offender. I don't think he's directly suspended for that hit on Trevor Lawrence. We've seen Shahir uh, make these types of hits on vulnerable players throughout the season. You can go back to the game against the Bears where he took a little cheap shot at Roshan Johnson and Caleb Williams. So I think it backtracks to he's a repeat offender. The hit itself was Trevor Lawrence sliding in a bad spot. I mean, he wants the first down. So Shahir says, okay, I'm going to defend the first down. And then Lawrence decides to slide. Shahir, who's already in full speed, goes in for the hit. And there's really nothing much he could have done. You can't just stop yourself full speed. And just
Hmm.
when you're in full speed, you just can't stop yourself. It's not like a quick eject button and then off you go from your seat right into the air and you get a nice parachute down to the ground.
Hmm.
When you're in full speed, you can't stop yourself. So I don't think there was really much for him to do. Is it going to be resulted in a suspension? Yes. But should it? In that situation, I don't know. If I'm switching this to more of a Bills perspective for a second, like, if Josh Allen got bell runged like that,
Oh
I'm
boy.
probably shouting for a suspension because my quarterback got bell runged. But if now flip it to if Greg Rousseau decided to go full speed, somebody and let's say another quarterback, just use Trevor Lawrence into the situation. Lawrence decided to slide, in a bad spot. Groot's coming full speed and he bell rungs Trevor Lawrence. I'm probably sitting here on a Tuesday saying this is probably a dumb suspension because you can't pull yourself back while you're running full speed into something and you're already fully committed into that. and
Well,
the NFL
okay.
have to get rid of the big hits like that, and I get it, but you can't stop yourselves full speed while Trevor Lawrence is sliding at a very, very bad spot.
Well, I mean, you really do have to kind of go back and watch the replay of the hit. I know you were actually at the game on Sunday, so you really didn't probably get to see much, of the 1 o'clock
Mhm,
action as it happened. But the fact is that if you watch it, you'll see that Trevor Lawrence is already down, and Aziz Al Shahir decides to continue to just move forward. I mean, he's got enough time that he could stop, but instead he continues to lower his arm and just blast Trevor Lawrence.
mm,
That's why he got the suspension. And yeah, he definitely had some moments where he was definitely trying to do this to other quarterbacks and other players. So he definitely deserved the suspension, but I think it should have been a whole lot longer of a suspension. Already saw this with Vontez Burfict a few years ago when he cheap shot Antonio Brown and when he repeatedly tried to cheap shot other players. And the precedent should have been he should have been suspended at least the rest of this season and a little bit into next season because the type of hit he gave to Trevor Lawrence is just absolutely disgusting. I mean,
yeah.
Trevor was well down by that point, and he had enough time to at least, get his arms up to where he wouldn't hit him, or at least not hit him that hard. But he just kept his shoulder into it. And he just reared into him. Then he tried to go after someone else after the fact that he hit him, and that just didn't set right. And to your point as well, Paul, if that had been Josh Allen that got his bell rung, I have a feeling that Bills Mafia would have absolutely jumped the stadium, jumped the railing, and gone down there trying to fight him. Like everybody in that stadium would have been after him if it was Josh Allen that got his bell rung. I mean, I know you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
We would have gone after that guy, whoever it was. It's not even if it was Aziz Al Shahir, if it was any defensive back or anybody that hit Josh Allen in the same way, and Josh Allen wasn't getting up, oh, we'd be pouring onto the field. I don't think stadium security could have even stopped us. Just we would have been going off on whoever it was. Like,
Mhm.
and Jacksonville's fans did throw stuff at him when he was walking into the locker room, and he tried to fight them too. So, all in all, a really bad look for an organization that is starting to fall apart. If you watch how they've played a lot of their games, I mean, they just lost to Tennessee, and then against Jacksonville, they really didn't look that you know good for a team that's supposed to be this elite team that's supposed to have this quarterback that's supposed to be the next Mahomes and be as good as Mahomes and everything else. So it
I'll
is
say
it is.
one more thing on this. While you were talking and while I was sitting here and listening, I was watching the replay at least a few more times. His two fists went right into the shoulder pad of Trevor Lawrence, and his shoulder while he was pushing down Lawrence, as you know, as you indicated that he was already down, but the worst part of the hit was when he went for the shoulder and Lawrence's head hit the ground. And the force of that was because Shahir was already in full speed. And I'm not saying that Shahir shouldn't be suspended. I full heartedly believe he should have been suspended. And I probably could be saying this same thing if this was Greg Rousseau, going in full speed and taking a shot like this. It just needs to be adjusted in some way where you say, because I just don't feel where I kind of come from this is as I sitting here watching the replay a few times is it wasn't a head first shot. He was ready going for the shoulders. The first point of contact was Shahir's two fists into Lawrence's shoulder. And then that force put Lawrence upper half of his body down to the ground and caused that whiplash effect from head to turf, and which turned into what is Lawrence's injury. So that's kind of where I kind of stand on it. He should be suspended, but I don't think it was a head first hit. It just ended up being that whiplash effect from the full force of the hit of Shahir coming full speed into Lawrence, who just slid at a very, very bad spot.
Hmm. I mean, there's definitely sides to both. There's definitely points that can be made for both sides, but he was definitely in the he was deserving of a suspension, and he got it.
Mhm.
So at least justice won out there. But let's go ahead and move on to the next quick take, which you actually had for me, I believe.
Mhm.
Hit
Your
me with it.
take for today is who can make a surprise jump in the AFC playoff picture? And it could be, a team that is going to jump one of these teams that are currently in, or if you feel like the playoff picture is going to stay the same, who do you kind of feel like is going to move the seeding in a way that might change the trajectory of some of these playoff matchups? Like right now, it's Bills, Broncos, and the Chiefs have the 1 seed. Is it the Broncos? Making a wild run for the AFC West, and all of a sudden the Chiefs are a wild card team. So what are you feeling is a surprise team that could move the trajectory of this AFC playoff picture?
Well, you got to remember that if it was Denver that made a run like that, they have to get past the Los Angeles Chargers first. And if you take a look at Denver's schedule, they got the Colts, the Chargers, the Bengals, and then the Chiefs to end the year. I actually think they could beat the Colts. I don't. The Chargers one's going to be almost a coin flip with how well they've actually been playing lately. The Bengals one, I think the Broncos probably could win this game, and then against the Chiefs, now that's who knows. And definitively, you'd actually rather them not. You'd rather Denver be comfortable enough to make the playoffs to where they feel like they don't have to rest any of their starters. Because if they do, then what's going to happen is if they feel like they're locked in enough to where they can rest their starters, then the Chiefs also won't have anything to play for. And for us to get the 1 seed, if we can manage to win out, then got to pray the Chiefs lose at least one, and they've got a cakewalk scheduled to end the year, other than the Chargers and potentially the Steelers. The rest of them could be pretty easy wins against the Browns, against the Texans, and then Broncos. Who knows? Either way, but I think if you're really talking about a team that could just come out of nowhere and surprise everybody, a few weeks ago I would have told you the Miami Dolphins, but we just watched what they did in Green Bay, and traditionally, once it gets down to about this time of the year, they forget how to play football, especially once you get them out of the state of Florida. They have the Jets, Texans, 49ers, Browns, and Jets again left on their schedule. They realistically could win all of those games, every single one of them, and finish 10-7. But is 10-7 going to sneak into the playoffs at the rate the Ravens, Broncos, and Chargers all look? I
Mhm.
don't think so. It would be, to be completely honest, it would be better for the Bills if they still had the 2 seed to draw Miami in the first round, because I would feel much more comfortable facing them than an upstart like the Broncos, with whom, yeah, I mean, it's a rookie quarterback. They don't really have much tape on Bo Nix, but they've still got a really solid team. If, or even better, actually even worse, would be drawing the Baltimore Ravens if they somehow managed to fall to 7 and the Bills were still at 2.
That would
So
sting.
that, yeah, I would rather that not happen. So if there's any team that could make a run to make the playoffs as the 7th seed, I prefer it to be the Miami Dolphins, but you've seen how they play when it comes to January. They are not the best team in the cold for obvious reasons. And I don't think the Indianapolis Colts can make a run at it, despite the fact that they've been playing pretty well. They had a little bit of a scare against the Patriots, but the real test is against Denver this week. If they play well there and they find a way to win, then I'll say the Colts might have a chance to upset the playoffs, barring the unforeseen collapse of the Houston Texans, which would give the Colts the AFC South. I don't see that happening. The Texans still have the Dolphins, Chiefs, Ravens, and Titans left. They actually could go 1-3, but can the Colts capitalize? I don't think so. So the Colts are a very interesting team to keep an eye on. So are the Dolphins. Both of them could upset the AFC playoff picture, but if we're just talking as objectively as possible, I have a feeling the teams are already set. It's just a matter of seeding. But we'll have to see what happens. I, for one, would absolutely love to see a Texans collapse to make them finish 8-9, with the Colts winning us just enough to go 9-8 and winning the AFC South. That would be hilarious.
It could happen, but here's where, if there's going to be an upset of one of these 7 teams going from playoffs to no playoffs, I think the most obvious could be the Broncos, but I think the Broncos are in. I think the Broncos are the team that could be the AFC sleeper as we enter into the playoffs, where when we get closer to the playoffs, what team do you not want to face? It's probably the Denver Broncos as of right now.
Hmm.
They're a young team, they're ready to go, and they're just flying high right now in Denver. But right now that's the current team the Bills are currently slated to play against. I think the Bills could Right now, I think the Bills could beat anyone right now, so I'm not going to say that the Bills are going to be scared of the Broncos or the Broncos could possibly upset the Bills in this situation. I think the Bills hold, you know, every team that they would face to a high standard, so I think the Bills would be
Hmm.
fine against any one of these teams other than probably the Baltimore Ravens as of right now. Every other team I think the Bills can beat on in the current wild card standings. I just want to avoid playing, the Ravens, even though it would be at home. We've already seen what the Ravens can do against our defense. I just would like to avoid that, especially in the first round. And I think the Ravens could be a team where they could possibly fall out of the playoff picture. They've already lost 2 of their last 3, 3 of their last 6, and it doesn't seem like the Ravens are the same team that we actually saw back in Baltimore. That run heavy team just can't score. They, I believe, only put up 12 over the weekend against the Eagles. Justin Tucker right now doesn't seem like the same old Justin Tucker. So is he going to be that same kicker that can get the Ravens past, some of these tougher opponents? And you look at the Ravens schedule, they go Giants, Steelers, Texans, and Browns. The Browns, even though they sit at 3 wins right now, they've been pretty competitive with Jameis Winston. And the Steelers, we already know the Ravens struggles against the Steelers. Then the Texans. That's going to be a competitive Christmas Day game in a few weeks. And I guess the only give me win might be the Giants. So if they go to get 2 wins over the next 4 games, that's 10-7. And you look at the Colts, or in this case, the Dolphins, who has probably the better chance of getting to 10 wins based on their schedule after, losing to Green Bay. The Dolphins or the Colts could find a way to sneak into the playoffs here. And let me pull up the Colts schedule really quick
Well,
because I think because that's going to play a huge factor in how the rest of the season is going to play out. The Colts have to finish Broncos, Colts, Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jaguars. I mean, if they get past the Broncos, I think they can win their final 3 games, and that gets them to 10 wins. And then all that turns into what does the Ravens look like? Point differential, conference, up against your conference. So I think the Ravens right now, out of the 7 teams, well, now 5 because 2 of them has clinched. So out of the 5 remaining, I think they have the worst remaining chances of making the playoffs, and that possible team that could slip out of the playoffs and in the hunt as we
you know
get
what?
close to the end of the season.
That's a great segue. You just said it. There are 2 teams that have clinched the playoff berth in the entire NFL, not just in the AFC. One of those obviously being the Chiefs with their win on Black Friday over the Raiders, and the other one, which I think it's time to realistically get into talking about, is the Bills with the division clinching win against the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday Night Football. Like I had said earlier, first team to clinch a division with 5 or more weeks remaining in the regular season since the 2009 Indianapolis Colts, led by Peyton Manning, which everybody always wants to compare Josh Allen to Peyton Manning, even though I always compare him game wise to Ben Roethlisberger, just a whole lot more athletic with a lot less off the field issues. But we need to get into this because there is so much to talk about with that game because oh
Oh, yeah.
my god, if you wanted a win, like a statement to prove that the Bills are here, yeah, we did it because the 49ers, you have to remember, they are very injured. They lost Christian McCaffrey in the middle of the game. They lost Jordan Mason in the game. Both of them placed on IR. Both of them seasons are over. And it's rough. I really feel bad for them. But whenever the injury bug bites the 49ers, it bites them very, very hard. And I'm thankful that we were able to come out of that game with no injuries as well, especially with Matt Milano
That's
returning.
wonderful.
I was in a Bills backers bar watching the game because I was supposed to be in Buffalo for the game, but plans got thrown out of whack and I sadly could not make it like I had intended. But the view on TV was definitely incredible. Like the entire place went wild on that long James Cook touchdown. And the minute I saw him break the first tackle and get to the sideline, I knew he was gone. That was electric. But I think it leads into the question that you had put into the outline. Thinking about how we've just beaten the reigning NFC champion, and the week before had just beaten the reign, or I said it, the reigning NFC champion this week, and last week had just beat the reigning AFC champion and Super Bowl champion. How far can this Buffalo Bills team go? If you want my opinion, this is the best shot the Bills have ever had at a Super Bowl. And the reason I say that is the Chiefs look really weak right now. Granted, it is still the regular season. They'll probably turn it up when it comes playoff time, but they look weak. On the NFC side, you have the Lions, who look really good, but you play them in 2 weeks. So if you could figure a way to slow down that offense or stifle that defense, I don't know who else you could physically stop if you can stop them. I mean, the Eagles would be a challenge, but you can't really think that far ahead this soon because obviously we got the Rams this week and we still want that 1 seed, which is still very much in reach. So I definitely think this version of the team can make the Super Bowl. And hopefully this is the year that they do it. This just it has the feel to it. Like this is not just a year where you're going into it and everybody's all hopeful that something can happen. This just feels like the year where that unless God Himself says you're not making it to the Super Bowl, this team feels like it can make the Super Bowl. With how Josh Allen has been playing, with how James Cook has been running the ball, with how the offense has been revitalized with Amari Cooper, with how the defense has come back to form, especially with Matt Milano healthy, finally playing snaps alongside Terrell Bernard, and everybody staying healthy. This is a Super Bowl capable team.
Mhm. I agree. And you go back to the beginning of the season and you're like, okay, what is this Bills team going to look like? You get off to that hot start, you lose a couple, and the Bills haven't lost since the Texans game, so 7 straight. And the question is, how far can this version of the Bills can go? I think they can get to the Super Bowl, 100%. But I don't think this Bills team will lose another game this regular season. I
That's a bold
I
statement.
don't think they're losing another game this regular season. That means they will finish 15-2, and that should get them the 1 seed. And how I think this is based off the last 7 games. Josh Allen, he's 100% the MVP, but he's gotten a balanced support.
At last.
Look, Josh Allen before Josh Allen started the season with 7 games without a turnover. No, he without an interception. Sorry, had 7 games without an interception. Yes, he has thrown interceptions in 4 of his last 5 games. But if you really look at it for Josh Allen, you could really say most of his interceptions, or at least half of his interceptions, are not on him. One was on, a slip by Amari Cooper, and a couple were just tip balls that just landed into the hands of a defender. But that's not the point here. You also get Matt Milano back. He played 77% of the snaps against Kansas City. And the biggest worry left on the Bills' remaining schedule is Detroit. By the time the Bills get to Detroit, which is one more game after this, but Matt Milano should be right around 95 to 100% of the snaps. If he played 77% of the snaps against the 49ers, I think you could bump that up to 85-90 for this week, and then
Mhm.
you rate around 95 to 100% against Detroit. And
I
I
was
think
actually
that
really amazed.
helps the Bills in that Detroit game. And then one
Mhm.
more thing. After you get through Detroit, you play New England, and then you New England twice, and the Jets once. And the issue is, well, those are your 3 remaining trap games. This team doesn't have a trap game mentality.
No,
This
they
team
really
is
don't.
focused on every opponent, and they do not look down on them. And that's is really my point here, is that they will not lose another game this regular season because they don't look down to their opponents, and they're finally getting healthy. And Josh Allen finally has a run game that can support his style of play. 15-2, let's go.
I like it. I mean, I still think that there's definitely, a chance they lose to Detroit. And in a way, there's a part of me that rather they would lose to Detroit only because if you lose to somebody once and you see him again in the playoffs, you usually know what you did wrong against them the first time and you look for revenge.
True.
It's a whole lot easier to beat a team the second time if you lost to them the first time. So I feel like if they happen to lose to Detroit but see them again in the Super Bowl, that would be best case because that'd be the other way around if the Bills happen to run the table, finish 15-2, and wind up running into Detroit in the Super Bowl. Then it'd be flipped on its head. But
True.
that's
I
not
mean,
really something that we're gonna want to dive into right away just because it's one game at
this
a
Bills
time.
team already beat Detroit. I mean, just a few years ago on Thanksgiving. I mean,
Yeah, well,
that
that
game that
team's a
game came
lot.
down to the wire. That game came
Oh, it
down to the
did.
wire, last second. Tyler Bass field goal, and I think this Bills Lions game is the Super Bowl preview, and I full-heartedly believe that this is a Super Bowl preview, and that means this probably turns into one of the games of the year where you're not turning your head away from the TV screen the
Oh, you got
entire
that
game,
right.
and that's really the only game left on the Bills' remaining schedule where I go, "Uh-oh, this could be a loss for the Bills."
I'd take
I'm a
14
little
wins.
scared. I'm a little scared of what the Lions could bring, with the two-headed monster of Gibbs and Montgomery. But I still think the Bills can get through that because Matt Milano is back. Matt Milano played 77% of the snaps. I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, I wasn't either.
I was expecting a 30-40% of the snaps, and you just gradually increase them as you get closer to the playoffs. But 77? I mean,
Hmm.
let's go. Get
That
get
was
Matt Milano
wild.
back for 85-90 next week and have him out on the field for at least 95% of the
Hmm.
snaps against Detroit, which is the biggest game remaining on your schedule, and honestly could tell you if the Bills are going to get the 1 seed or not.
Hmm.
Because if you slip a game, you realistically, as you go forward, if you want to take this back for a second, go back to my take of 15-2, that should get you the 1 seed. I mean, that realistically, that's clinches you the 1 seed 100% guaranteed, unless the Chiefs for some reason can match the Bills in that fashion. But in that case, if both teams end up being 15-2, the Bills have the tiebreaker, so the
Hmm.
Bills would still get the 1 seed. So you look at it, the Bills here, they're playing this game where they could run the table, and maybe I'm being a little too overconfident, but I kind of like it like this right now. It's because this team could beat up teams that have really good defenses and beat them convincingly, but also the games against the smaller opponents where you would say last year would quote unquote the trap game. They haven't tripped on any of their trap games this season. Seattle. Went to the Seattle and we beat them. Jacksonville. They
Oh,
came to our place
yeah.
and we destroyed them. Same
Yeah,
thing with
that's the
Tennessee.
trap. Those two right there were the trap. I wouldn't have considered Seattle a trap. That was a tough opponent that we managed to beat. Now, that was 100%. Those other two, though, absolute trap games. And we still won. And by one, I mean we won. Looking
Yeah.
right at you, Chiefs. Dogfight with the Panthers. Unbelievably horrid performance. You know what the Bills would have done? We would have clobbered them like we clobbered the Jaguars.
Yeah.
For God's sakes, that's why you just can't have faith in the Chiefs right now because they put up a fight. The Panthers put up a fight against the Chiefs. And on top of that, you look at what they did against the Raiders. The Raiders put up a fight against the Chiefs. Two very bad teams put up a fight against the Chiefs. Meanwhile, you got the Bills, who against their really bad opponents, 47-10, 34-10, 30 to well, Colts aren't a bad team. 35-10 against 49ers last Sunday night, and against the Seahawks, who I would still claim are a very good team, 31-10. I mean, the Bills don't take anybody lightly, which they must have watched the tape from the 2017 Pittsburgh Steelers and realized, okay, this is what it means to not take opponents lightly because that's all that old team did was take everybody lightly, and that's why they lost to the Jaguars in the playoffs. Anyway, moving forward, we have more topics to talk about because we could definitely keep going about this one for a while.
Oh, we
Paul,
can.
what, in your opinion, is the bigger statement to come out of Sunday night? The fact that the Bills have clinched the AFC East already, or the fact that Josh Allen had a record-breaking performance in a 4-touchdown game.
Kudos to Josh Allen. Congrats
For
on your
real.
engagement. I mean,
That
you
especially.
had he wasn't he was credited
Wedding in
with
the
a
stadium.
passing touchdown and a receiving touchdown on that one play with Amari Cooper, but he wasn't credited with a reception, which is wild to me. You're getting a receiving touchdown, but you actually are not credited with a reception. Like, how does that happen? But Josh Allen, we already know what Josh Allen is. We already know that Josh Allen is an MVP type quarterback. We know that already. We know
Mhm.
that Josh Allen is a football maniac. We know that already. We know that Josh Allen loves playing in the snow. We know that. So, what's the bigger statement? It's clearly, to me, the Bills clinching the division this weekend and how they did it.
Mhm.
They're 10-2. If you go back to when the Bills were 3-2 and they take the loss against the Texans, and you told me that at that moment the Bills would be 10-2 and would have clinched the division the week after, the week of San Francisco coming to Buffalo, and we would have beat them 35-10, I would have think you were crazy.
Hmm.
I would think you were absolutely out of your mind
Oh, yeah.
because that team against the Texans were not the same team that we're seeing right now. And this team, from the red zone, which has been one of the best red zone offenses in the National Football League. I mean, they're top 2, top 3 at almost every offensive statistical category right now. James Cook right now has
Mhm.
9 rushing touchdowns in the red zone. Think about that. Red zone touchdowns. What are you supposed to do when you get into the red zone? You score touchdowns. The run
That's the
game
theoretical idea,
has
yes.
been incredible this season. And it didn't show up really in that first few slate of games, but it's taking a shift. No one thought the Bills would be 10-2 after their first 12
Nope.
games. I mean,
I certainly didn't.
we both sat here, with Ben and told people that there was a way to this. Did we fully commit to believing that? Not
No.
100%, but we told people all the time that there was a way the Bills could end up 10-2 right now. Did we
Mhm.
think that the Bills would wrap up the division? Most
No.
likely not. And it comes from, Miami having a down year. We told you that
Yeah, Tua getting hurt
Aaron
really cost 'em.
Rodgers, we told plenty of fans Aaron Rodgers and that offense was going to collapse in
Oh,
New
yeah.
York and it
That
wasn't going to
everybody knew.
stick.
If you knew ball, you knew that. I don't know why so
Right.
many people were so high on the Jets. You knew they were gonna fall apart at some point.
So clinching your division in week 13, the first time in like 15 years, that's a statement by the Buffalo Bills. That's
Mhm.
a statement by Brandon Bean because he went out and built this team after cutting everyone off at the old
Mhm.
era,
Yep.
retooling, refurbishing this Bills offense and defense for Sean McDermott and Bobby Babbitt and Joe Brady. All four
Mhm.
of those guys, including Bean, deserve tons of credit for the Bills being 10-2.
Mhm.
And then Josh Allen is just a complete freak.
I would definitely agree to everything that has been said, especially the Josh Allen being a freak part, because it's just entirely true. That was an MVP level game from him. And I'll talk about it a little later in our standout player of the week. But we're going to have a lot of questions in this offseason, which is why it's so imperative that we just go out there and
Mhm.
win the whole thing this year.
Yeah,
This was supposed to be the rebuilding year, according to
it
everybody.
was.
And in all realistic
To the hell with
realities,
that
it
right now.
was. I mean, exactly. We're off. I mean, realistically, I had this team going 10-7 in the preseason, still winning the division, of course, but not going like this. Like,
The
they're
Bills
already
right
at
around 11 wins, which has
yeah,
been
they're
their average.
yep. See, I already had them at 10 wins, and they're already now at that mark that I had for them in the preseason.
Yeah,
So, it's just
crazy.
it's absurd. This Bills team is just on a rail right now, and let's go ahead and transition into our next question because I do wanna get to the standout players of the week because there's some very important ones and then our obvious game picks.
Awesome.
All right, so after clinching the division in week 13 with the 1 seed still in play, this should be a very obvious answer. How hard should the Bills push for the top seed in the AFC?
Well, you said it was a obvious answer.
That's because it is.
So I'm going to tell you the consensus here probably isn't so obvious right now.
Mhm.
There was a caller on One Bills Live today, just read, I was just listening to it. They were thinking about, starting, when do you start resting some of your players because the division's already, collected and, you start resting your players as we get closer to the fourth quarter of games, you start retracting, how much playing time they get. And I'm going to tell you that no, you don't do that unless it's a blowout, just like last week. You don't. You want to, even though you have the division, and right now you sit the 2 seed, you don't want to. You do not want to take your foot off the gas. Not now. Not when the 1 seed's available. If you're Sean McDermott, the question should be, is the 1 seed at play? If the answer is yes, you tell everyone who thinks that they should start resting their players to get off Twitter and to go home, put some pajamas on, and rest because they're crazy. You have the 1 seed at play. If you saw what the weather conditions were like in Buffalo on Sunday, players and fans getting pelted with snow the entire game and still was able to put up 35 points. And granted, the Bills in the first quarter were wearing the wrong shoes,
Ha.
and then they were running out of shotgun. And then Joe Brady says, "Hey, hell with shotgun. We're going to play under center now." You want that 1 seed in Buffalo,
Oh, you do.
even if it's going to be for 2 games at home. That's massive.
Yep, the
You
AFC running through Buffalo would be absolutely imperative for literally anybody coming up, especially a team like, say, the Los Angeles Chargers, or even not so much the Denver Broncos, but someone like the Los Angeles Chargers, who, in Los Angeles, you're not really accustomed to cold. That'd be
right.
huge, them coming to Buffalo for a game in the divisional round, should they get to the divisional round themselves. It is very obvious that this team needs that 1 seed, especially with it being so close. Like, you could literally reach out and sniff it. But,
Mhm.
let's go ahead and move on to the standout players of the week because this is a good tie-in for a future article that I actually am preparing to write because I feel like this guy's getting a little bit of he's getting a lot of really good attention. But when you look ahead to the offseason and you look ahead to roster construction, a lot of people think that they just want to kind of leave him behind. And I definitely don't agree that they should leave him behind so soon. The standout player of the week for me on offense is James Cook. And I know that Josh Allen obviously deserves a big mention here, but when am I ever one to just give somebody the obvious person the regular mention? Of course, Josh Allen is a standout because, well, he kind of had a record setting game. But James Cook played out of his mind and has been playing out of his mind the entire season. Look at what you're also seeing across the league with teams like the Packers and Josh Jacobs, the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, and the Ravens with Derrick Henry. Are we really going to just be so quick to dismiss James Cook? Tell him, all right, someone wants to pay you, go get paid elsewhere, only for him to turn into what Barkley and Henry have become on another team. I don't think so. I think that you should 100% give him at least another year or two to see what you have in Ray Davis before you make a final decision on whether you move on from him or not. But that's a whole nother story entirely. James Cook just absolutely killed it this week. Like, no other words to describe it. That long touchdown run had everybody going and
Oh yeah,
had me going too. So,
he's
standout
due.
defensive player, I mean, they were all great. I mean, Matt Milano coming back and playing more snaps than we all thought he would,
Yeah,
insane. But I mean, Christian Benford had another outstanding game. So many on defense you could also give the same consideration to. But for me, it's going to be James Cook. Go ahead with yours, Paul. We got game picks to get to.
really quick on your James Cook assessment here. He has another year left on his contract, and I
Hmm.
think if you're the Bills, you're looking at your 2026 contracts because that's when your big guys, lots of your big guys are due for your contracts. You're sure like, okay, when do you start signing some of these guys? You'll probably start looking at James Cook this season. You'll probably start looking at Khalil Shakir and and Bernard. All three of these guys probably this off season,
Hmm.
and then you probably go to Groot and Benford after the 2026 season because I think them to still have another year left on their
Hmm.
deal, just like a bunch of these guys, through the 2025 season. Groot, Ben, Groot, and Bernard, I think, are going to be your two biggest contracts. I think Shakir, Cook, and Benford will all be, from the medium range to low end deals. I think probably the highest of the three probably be James Cook on the higher end, and then Shakir would be like wide receiver two, maybe three money. You don't want to give him less money and him thinking that you're disrespecting him. Same thing with Benford. You don't want to give him too low of money where he says, "Okay, you're disrespecting me now and how I play." So I think, contracts would be fun to talk about, in April when the season
Hmm.
is over with and we're
Oh,
talking
absolutely.
about that. We're talking about the Bills winning this division right now. These guys are
Oh,
super
yeah.
important right now to get the one seed and
Mhm.
a possible surprise. Hey, we're in the Super Bowl now, type of run here. And this standout player is kind of hard because I 100% just want to just cloud over Josh Allen right now. Just sitting there here and just continue talking about, how great Josh Allen is. I'm going to I'm going to give it to Amari Cooper.
All right.
And even
That's a good
though
one.
even though he didn't really do much, he did this
He did what he
he
had to
only
do on
had
that
3
lateral.
catches for 12 yards, but his instincts of getting tackled by 2 49ers players and say, "Hey, Josh, take the football." And Josh says, "Okay, I'll take it." And then Josh Allen takes it the rest of the way for a touchdown. And at this point, I'm still confused if this was a play in the playbook because Sean McDermott hinted at it in his press conference, in his post interview with Scott Van Pelt. And, Van Pelt says, "Is this a play in the book?" He kind of says, "This is a play in the book." Then Josh Allen walks in and says, "Hey, let's do a snow angel." And then did a snow angel. And so there isn't really a definitive answer if this was an actual play called by Joe Brady. So I want to go on the fly here and say this was all instinctual by Amari Cooper. And that was probably the greatest touchdown I've seen in a
Hmm.
long time. And
That
that's
play had all
just
the looks of improvisation, from
yeah.
how Amari kind of looked back and pitched Josh the ball backwards to
I
how
didn't
Allen was
know
like,
it was
"Oh,
pitched. I didn't know that touchdown was at the far end zone. I didn't know it was pitched until I looked at the scoreboard and watched the replay, and I was blown away. I was
oh,
like,
yeah." It was something else on TV as
"What?"
well. Like when we saw at the bar, when we saw Amari pitch the ball back, we were like, "Wait, what's going on here?" And when Josh moved in to go for the end zone, we were all just like, "Wait, what? What's happening?" And then he gets in, and everybody just loses their minds. I mean, that was some heads up play, and it also shows the
Yes.
connection that he already has
Yeah.
with Amari Cooper, and that's very important going forward. But good choices for
All right.
standout players. We have game picks to get to.
We do.
So let's get into these because we got some good ones coming up.
We do. We got lots of good games. Never changed the records for this game pick for the bottom stream yard. But Ben had a great week last week. He went 5-1. Connor, you also went 5-1 last
Let's
week.
go.
So both of you guys are striving in game picks.
Let's
While I
go.
went while I went the good old fashioned mid. I went actually I was bad last week. I went 2-5. So I stand at
Ouch.
41-38. Ben is 46-33. Connor, you're 44-35. So the playoff hunts is hunting as you guys are currently in the front runners for being first place in game
Nice.
picks.
I love it.
Let's start with the
Let's
first
keep the
one, the
win
good old
rolling.
fashioned NFC North battle. Ben has Green Bay in this game. It's Detroit hosting Green Bay.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun game on Thursday night. I tell you what.
It will be.
This is probably one of the few teams I think that's going to be able to give Detroit a run for their money, and that's just the whole divisional game, the rivalry aspect. I am excited. I still believe that Detroit is going to win this game, and that is solely
Mhm.
because they have the much better defense. I think they'll be able to keep Jordan Love in check, and as long as they keep him in check, they'll be able to stuff the lanes to keep Josh Jacobs from getting away. And I definitely think this is going to be a very close game, but I think Detroit wins in the end due to a defensive stop.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I think Green Bay has all the recipe, the hidden secret formula to beat the Detroit Lions. But I think Detroit Lions are just really that good, and nobody is stopping the Detroit Lions right now until they face Buffalo in a week.
Fingers
But
crossed.
I think fingers crossed. But I think Detroit enters next week's game with another win against the Green Bay Packers, and I'm surprised no one outbid CBS for this game for next week's game.
You ain't
Bills
kidding.
Lions.
How do you not
The
make that
NFL is
Sunday night
about
football?
NFL is about the money, but the NFL says, you know what, CBS protected this with lots of money, so
Hmm.
we'll keep it with CBS. So
Right?
great for CBS to have it. They get another great Bills classic game coming up, but the NFC is wild right now. Falcons have to go on the road to the Vikings in a very sneaky 1 o'clock game.
Sneaky is right. This is good. That's going to be an interesting game. The Falcons need to bounce back a little bit here. Vikings need to prove that they're still one of the top teams in the NFC, be able to keep pace with Detroit, and at this rate, being able to keep pace with Green Bay so they don't get overtaken.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to take the Minnesota Vikings on this one. I think that their win last week showed the grit that the team has. And I definitely think that despite Sam Darnold not having the best of games, and people actually were on Twitter calling for Daniel Jones to start, I think that he will have a bounce back game against the Falcons, and I'm just going to take them. Vikings are going to win this game.
Vikings played a 1 point game, I believe, last week against the Arizona Cardinals. That game was first half filled with field goals. The second half, their offense finally got going. And this is the Falcons team. I think this is Kirk Cousins returning home. So this would be a fun matchup for Kirk Cousins, but I don't think the Falcons are going to win. I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to win this game. Ben also had the Vikings, but we clean sweep Vikings last week and they won, so it shouldn't be a jinx. But this is an elimination matchup this weekend. down in Miami Gardens.
Oh boy.
Miami is trying to fight for their playoff lives, while the Dolphins could also eliminate the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers from playoff contention
Oh,
with
it's
a win.
beautiful. It's beautiful for us.
Ben
No matter who loses, it's a win.
Ben has the Dolphins eliminating the Jets for once and all. Connor, Jets or Dolphins?
Oh, yeah. I also have the Dolphins winning over the Jets. I don't even need to think twice. If the Dolphins manage to lose this game to the Jets, a game in which Tua Tagovailoa is going against an organization that he actually owns, very much like how Josh Allen owns him. I mean, at that point, if they lose that game, blow it all up right then and there because you are not making the playoffs if you lose one more game. You'd have to get way too lucky with way
Mhm.
too many variables having to go for you if you lose to the Jets. And at that point, like I said, just fire everybody if you lose. So Dolphins are going to win. If they don't, they ought to blow it up right then and there. And if the Jets get eliminated at that point, you just absolutely you just bench Aaron Rodgers the rest of the way, and then he retires.
Well,
I mean, you
that's a
have nothing left to
that's a
play
take.
for. Just bench him. I mean, you have nothing left to play for if you lose to
That
the
is true.
Dolphins. So I'm taking the Dolphins.
Miami does if Miami does win and they eliminate the Jets, I'm kind of okay with it, but I'm also kind of not okay with it. Because
Why?
that means the Dolphins are one win closer to getting into the playoffs.
Eh.
And I think the win-win here is the Jets beating the Dolphins in this game, even though they would survive and not be eliminated, but they will probably lose the following week anyways, the Jets. So I'm going to take the Jets in this game just because I feel like we try to take the Bills bias and Bills emotion out of the game pick, but I think this one is a win-win for me, and I really don't want Miami sneaking their way into the playoffs. I just feel like it's better for the Bills if the current seeding stays the same, and if let the bottom feeders figure out where they want to be, if they want to be in or out, or what seed
Exactly.
they actually decide they want to be. So, this game, go Jets. I mean, if the Dolphins win,
Blech.
woohoo. If the Dolphins win, woohoo. I guess the Jets
Yeah.
are out,
Yes.
and we can have a uh, funeral for the Jets fans as they enter the offseason. Biggest game on Sunday for the Bills in this case. Chiefs hosting the Chargers. There is a scenario here. Let me tell you. The Bills beat the Rams and the Chargers beat the Chiefs. The Bills are the 1 seed leaving week 14
Mhm.
because of tiebreakers, because the Bills beat the Chiefs just 3 weeks ago. Ben says no, the Bills are not going to get the 1 seed this week. He has KC winning this game. Do you think LA has the chance to play spoiler?
Well, it is going to be a close game. And unfortunately for the Chiefs, this ain't the Raiders and this
It's
ain't the
not. No.
Panthers. I
Nope.
think this is a better Chargers team
It
than
is.
people are giving them credit for. I mean, they look great right now. They've looked great the past few weeks. The Chiefs have not looked great the past few weeks. It's shaping up to be a interesting divisional round or a divisional matchup that I actually think could very well go in the Chargers' favor. I would love for it to go in the Chargers' favor. And with all of that being said, I am taking the Kansas City Chiefs to win the game.
You
You
don't
know they're
think
gonna
enough is gonna happen?
you know they're gonna do it. You know they're gonna
That is
figure some way out to win this game, whether it's
some
ref.
Mahomes Chiefs dark magic will
Yep,
rain
yep,
upon. Something will happen,
yep.
and it won't happen this game though. The Chargers are going to beat the Chiefs. Somebody has to take down the Chiefs
Other
Chiefs
than
other
us.
than the Bills. And the Chiefs are going to lose more than one game this season. The Chiefs, I believe, will lose at least anywhere from 3 to 4 games this season. The rest of their schedule is a little difficult, but also soft in a way. Their losses in the Chiefs schedule, that includes the Chargers and the Broncos, divisional matchups, are super important to win, but they're also trap games. And
Mhm.
divisional games are hard to win.
Yep.
Look at Black Friday. They just escaped the Raiders. And the Chiefs' luck has to run out somewhere. And I feel like you do this almost every other couple of weeks where I say the Chiefs' magic is finally going to end. And then
Yeah, and
something
then they
ridiculous
just prove you
happens.
wrong.
All right, we have tons of conference championships to be reigned this weekend after the 12-team playoff was announced. And Alabama sneaks their way in as Miami now is the first team out as a two-loss program after losing to Syracuse, who now sneaks their way into the top 25 as number 22 in the college football top 25 rankings. It all really depends on if SMU is going to beat Clemson or is Fresno State going to pull up a wild upset of Boise State on Friday night.
No.
Stay tuned for that. We're not picking the Mountain West championship game, but we're going to pick some of the other big ones. Iowa State, Arizona State in this game. Pac 12, the old Pac 12 dominance this season has shown in both the Big 12 and in the Big 10 because both of the old Pac 12 have made it to conference championship games. Ben has Arizona State. Who do you have?
Uh, I'm not one much for college ball, especially now that my Seminoles are not even close to bowl bound or anything because we kind of
Okay.
suck. But uh,
They lost to
hold
the
on.
Gators.
What was this matchup one more time?
Iowa State, Arizona State.
I'm thinking Arizona State will win.
Okay.
We'll see if I'm right.
I hope you're right because I'm also going Arizona State.
Hmm,
I'm going to give you a quick reason why here. Arizona State just been this team that's just been getting hot toward the end of the season, and they finally found, I think, their spot where they can finally sneak in. And if they win, they're 1000% in. So this is a massive, massive game for Arizona State, the football program, but it's also kind of like a good boast to the old Pac-12.
Mm-hmm.
And that was completely destroyed in a way and says, hey, Pac-12, we were once the Pac-12, we can actually compete with other teams. But the SEC championship game happens in the ATL on Saturday afternoon. They will
we
have to face Georgia, who they
we got a
lost to
rematch.
at home, but this time it's the neutral playing sites.
Mm-hmm.
Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, elite matchup. The winner, probably gets a first round bye. The loser will probably have a home playoff game. So the stakes are not super, super high. But Ben has Texas winning the SEC championship game. Who do you have?
Well, first and foremost, let me preface by the fact that how on earth is Texas still allowed to compete for a championship with an injured starting quarterback? I thought we were having to set a precedent here by eliminating Florida State last year for not having their starting
Well,
quarterback healthy.
Quinn
Him,
Ewers is playing.
yeah, I
He
know,
played
but he's
last
hobbled.
week.
It don't matter. It shouldn't count. But all right, I'm done
Okay.
trolling. I'm done trolling. That was mostly if Jenna watches. She'll find me later. But no, in all seriousness, I feel like this is going to come down to Quinn Ewers' health,
Yeah.
and Sarkeesian has to be a lot quicker on the draw if he starts playing really poorly to put Arch Manning in this game. I feel like if they can pull all of that off, Texas will win the game and send Georgia home. So I am also taking the Longhorns. Hook 'em all the way home, but we'll see what happens.
This game, both teams will most likely make the college football playoffs. So it really just is a fight for, you know, new versus old, the new team in the SEC versus the old team in the old empire of Georgia. facing Texas. And really, it's also a fight for who gets the first round bye in the playoff and who will have a home playoff first round. I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, well, Texas have been this up and down roller coaster, but they've been able to win games. Georgia had to play an 8 overtime game against Georgia Tech on Black Friday, and they just been, just like Texas, just winning games by the skin of their teeth. I think Texas wins this game,
Hmm.
but I think it's going to be a close game, close, low scoring game. The games that Texas have been playing basically for the second half of the season, and they've been winning them. So I think that's the type of game we're going to see. Oregon and Penn State. Penn State sneaks in because Ohio State can't beat Michigan.
Haha.
Uh, Ben has Oregon winning this game because he also picked Oregon to win the Big Ten. He has to stick with his pick. Connor?
Mhm. Oregon's going to win the game. I am going to just leave it right at that. I think Oregon's number one for a reason. They've been playing really good football. 100%. They're just going to walk. They're not going to run away with the game, but they are going to win. So I'm
Just
taking
like
them.
Ben, he went Oregon because he picked Oregon to win the Big Ten. I had Penn State winning the Big Ten.
Oh my.
So this pick is because I picked Penn State to go to the playoffs, and because I said at the beginning of the year when we were doing our college football preview, Penn State, how they make the playoffs is by winning the Big Ten championship. Well, I picked them to win the Big Ten. They're in the Big Ten championship. Can they get a big win in Indianapolis? Let's hope so, because Nittany Lions will win the Big Ten. Clemson, SMU. Oh,
I
this
don't.
is this is a fun little game this weekend out in Charlotte. You know, Clemson, the big dogs of the SEC, ACC, against SMU that came from the American and just walked right through the ACC and now had a first round bye in the college football playoff. Ben has SMU. Connor?
Well, like I said, it's college football. I'm not really as big into it as the NFL, especially with my own Knowles being very irrelevant. But I am going to use that irrelevancy to make this pick entirely based off of pure hatred alone. I
Haha.
cannot stand Clemson. SMU is winning this game.
SMU would love you because if they win this game, honestly, they probably get the first round bye and
Give
one
it
of the
to them.
top 4 seeds in the
Any,
college football playoff.
anything to eliminate Clemson.
But if they lose, this lots of things can happen if Boise State and SMU loses this weekend. Say like if SMU loses by a lot and UNLV gets the upset over Boise State, both of those teams, Boise State and SMU, are in the top 4 seeds and get in the first round bye. Imagine if both of them lose. Absolute chaos will happen. But I don't think that will happen. I think SMU gets the upset this weekend over
Yeah.
Clemson, and we'll see a new ACC champion based on a new ACC team
Don't
in
remind me.
in
The
the
defending
ACC.
the defending ACC champions don't even have a say in it because we suck now.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
it's
rough.
brutal.
It's a little rough. But any
But
final thoughts, Connor, as we wrap
well,
up a
realistically, there's only one
tri-state?
final thought. Celebrate while we can. This
Mhm.
Bills team is special. Love it. Lavish in every bit of the emotion that they give you because it is very, very rare to see a team come around like this. I had somebody say that they thought this was a similar feeling to how everybody in the Jim Kelly era felt during the 90s when they made 4 straight Super Bowls. To me, this just feels like this is that team that can make the Super Bowl and can win the Super Bowl if they're playing on all cylinders while relatively healthy. So let's just enjoy it. That's all I got to say is just enjoy it, live it, Love it. And that is the last thing I would have. Is there anything else that you would have to say to that end, Paul? Anything at all?
One wild thing that's just crossed my screen. This is nothing to do with Bills football, but I guess this Joe Jacobs of the MLB Network saying that Juan Soto is going to the New York Mets for 14 years, a $665 million deal.
Huh?
I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but
Who
an
shared it?
hour ago he did say the Mets are going to get Juan Soto for 14 years, $665 million.
That's
Well,
quite the deal if that's true.
if it's true, and it seems like he's a reputable source, he's a senior executive for the MLB Network, so I would think that's reputable enough. If that stands down and it is true and it goes through, Juan Soto is a New York Met. But I
We'll see what
second
happens.
everything that you said
Yeah,
about
this
the Buffalo Bills. This is a
this
special season.
oh yes. It excites me. And let's just hope that we can maintain the success and maintain the momentum going forward against the Rams with a very potent rushing attack in Kyron Williams and Blake Corum and a very, very potent defensive line with both of my former Seminoles, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, running the show. But I believe that is all we have time for this evening. Thank you, everyone, for watching the live stream if you watched on Twitter or on YouTube. And if you like to listen to us later in the podcast version, thank you for that as well. Any listen, any watch is very much appreciated. And to that end, go Bills, AFC East champions
Let's
again.
go. 5 Pete. Let's go. Go Bills.